What's going on, Jeromes? It's beautiful Thursday, and we got 5 good Vikings questions on the docket again. First up is Magic Minecraft Show. What needs to be... Actually, my kids will probably love that. What needs to be the Vikings' numero uno priority this offseason? Love the content. Now, I feel like quarterback should almost just be not even listed because it's so important, right? But outside of quarterback, which... succession plan is extremely important. If the Vikings have Kirk Cousins back, awesome. If the Vikings make a move, find a groove, find the quarterback of the future in the draft, even better. If they do both at the same time, man, that would be the perfect solution. And also, all this affects Justin Jefferson. I think once they have a solid succession plan in place at quarterback, I think Jefferson signs that extension. But absent that, defensive line, both edge rusher and interior, and depending on what happens with Daniil, right now I will give the edge to, pun intended, edge to defensive interior because, the Vikings simply cannot get anything going in terms of rushing the passer and in terms of stopping the run from the inside. So they have to build a bully and revamp that line of scrimmage as well as probably cornerback. Yeah, so right now, quarterback, it's the obvious one, but D-line, edge rusher if Daniil leaves, cornerback, offensive line, running back. I think that's currently where we're at. Number 2, Kong Chang Vang, European. I can make that joke. Would you trade 2 firsts and a third and Hockenson for the 2nd overall pick? I feel like that would be a solid trade to get Williams-May. I love Hawk, but quarterback is a need, especially after GB and Detroit's win in the playoffs. I really like Gesicki, and I feel like we can get him in the offseason for cheap. I'm not sure if this trade affects our cap or not. Just curious. Well, the Vikings would have to eat a decent amount of cap from the Hockenson trade, but I don't think that Washington is going to trade for Hockenson, especially before the draft, especially since his knee is up in the air. Where, yes, is he 99% to return from that knee injury? Yes, but also, is there a non-zero chance that he's not the same player? I think that's certainly knocking all the wood, but it is what it is. So, taking Hockenson out of it, would the equivalent be if you included Addison, which teams very rarely trade players, especially first-round players, after one season. But if that was part of the deal, if the Vikings could find their way all the way up to 2 and have essentially their choice of quarterbacks outside of whoever goes 1, it's tough. Because Addison is going to be a stud, and also you are including 2 firsts, which likely includes number 11, and also a future 3rd rounder since the Vikings don't have one this year. You got to be 100%. Like you got to be 100% on whoever you get at 2. All right. Next up, Reptar 11. Do you think ownership could secretly be the problem with the mediocrity we've seen from this team over the years? Obviously, they want to win, but it just seems like they have a specific vision for the culture and care more about that than taking chances to elevate this franchise to a true contender. I would say no. I think the Wilfs are one of the best owners in the league. I think what's great about them is that they will spend money. People talk about the stadium, yada, yada, but look at the facilities at TCO. They're the best in the league, and they will go the extra mile to make sure that this is a first-class organization, and they hire who they perceive to be good people at their jobs and let them work, right? Whether it be Zimmer and Spielman, they inherited Spielman. Actually, did they hire Spielman? Yeah, it was about the same time when they bought the team from McCombs. So, yes, they hired Spielman, and now with Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, they're going to let them see this thing through. Right? And also, I love that the Wilfs, like Ziggy or Mark, aren't constantly in the media. Like, occasionally, you'll hear Mark on, Good Morning Football talk about things, but they're not Jerry Jones. Like, they don't have their own local sports radio show. But you see this across all sports. There are definitely certain owners that are perfectly fine with mediocrity as long as their team is raking in money. They don't really care. And especially, you see this in the NBA, where some teams are now being taken over by hedge fund corporations, and it's all about the bottom line, and they will just put out a whatever product and don't rock the boat. And I mean, they can be bad, they can be mediocre, but as long as the bills are being paid and millions are still coming in, I mean, they're fine with it. I don't think that the Wilfs are like that because the Vikings do take chances. I mean, signing Kirk Cousins as a free agent back in 2018 is probably one of the biggest gambles of the last decade in free agency. That people don't give the Vikings enough credit for. So I think that the Vikings will take risks to try and improve, try and be that team, and also the way that the Wolves reinvest in the squad, they want to see them do well. Where I mean, you see. Cincinnati notoriously is one of the cheapest teams in the league. Same thing with the Bears, and also the Cardinals got roasted famously by the NFLPA player survey, where it's like, players have to pay for their own dinners, or it's deducted from their checks at the team facility. That's ridiculous. All right, so the Wilfs aren't owners where they just want to vacuum up every single available dollar and be super cheap. I mean, you saw that with Red McCombs. I mean, one of the reasons why the Vikings struggled in the aughts is that, the Vikings weren't spending on facilities, they weren't spending on players, they weren't spending on coaches, they weren't spending on a lot of things, right? And McCombs was just trying to get top dollar when he sold the team eventually to the Wolves, or threatening to move the team in San Antonio. Remember that? That was so stupid. That was ridiculous, man. But no, like I said, some owners are perfectly fine. Just let's go 9-8, occasionally make the playoffs, and we'll go from there. But no, the Wolves want to win. And the Wolves grew up as Giants fans. They saw how the Giants were transformed during the Parcells era. They tried to get a little bit of the Parcells tree when they hired Zimmer, brought him in. And they want to win championships. They want to hoist their own Barties. Because guess what? The value of your franchise goes up way more if you're a consistent winner. It helps with national and international brand recognition. And all you want, it's a self-perpetuating thing. Just think of what the Patriots were in 2000, the value of the Patriots with Robert Kraft, like right down here. All of a sudden, you go on that run where the worst possible thing is for people to have zero opinion of you. And you look at the Yankees, you look at the Patriots, you look at the Warriors before the Warriors got bad. You either love them or hate them, and that has a lot of value, man. And yeah, so you look at the value of the Patriots then. 6 rings, and then all of a sudden you're up here. Obviously, I do think that the Wolves and the Vikings want to win, and they're going to get after it, man. Cash Collin. NFC North looks like it's going to be competitive for the foreseeable future. That being said, do you think the Vikings can be competitive without Kirk? Yes. Now, there's going to be a lot of moving parts. Number one, that they have to solidify themselves in the trenches, and that's something that both the Bears, not the Bears. That's something that the Packers and the Lions have done. The Lions left to right might have the best offensive line in football, and also they've invested heavily along the defensive line. You look at Hutchinson, you look at Aleem McNeil, you look at Muzariki, and with Green Bay, they've invested heavily in that front seven. And outside of Bakhtiari, that offensive line can be solid. Yeah, I love me some Elton Jenkins, I love me some Zach Tom. Josh Myers is pretty solid too. So that's where it starts and ends. And yes, quarterback, but you see the teams remaining in the tournament, either the 1 seed Ravens or the Niners are the teams that won. Like, they control the line of scrimmage. That's something the Vikings have to get back to, where the Vikings had that with the 2017, the early Zimmer defenses, when you had Linval Joseph and Everson and Daniil patrolling things, but you let that erode. And yeah, scheme change might be part of it too. But offensive line wise, they got away from having those mammoth offensive linemen, probably around the John Sullivan era. Then that pivoted to, hey, let's have lighter, more athletic offensive linemen. Let's run this outside zone scheme versus having guys like Phil Lodeholt versus having guys like Steve Hutchinson and David frickin' Dixon and Anthony Herrera and Bryant McKinney. Like, I want to get back to the days of having a 350-pound offensive lineman who's just going to toss your ass out of the club. I want to get back to that, man. Lastly, Sam Snead, assuming the top 3 quarterbacks are gone, what other quarterbacks do you think have the highest ceiling? Are there any that have all the physical tools? Well, outside of May, Williams, and Daniels, and I'm not saying that they're perfect prospects, but I think they're in a separate tier from the other quarterbacks because I think that they have the fewest question marks. And I've said this a bunch. I think that Drake May has a good chance of going 1. Because I think teams are going to fall in love with his athleticism. He's he's like a hybrid of Josh Allen. Well, you take Justin Herbert with Josh Allen's athleticism, that's Drake May. And I think that there's a chance that he could go number one. Caleb Williams, I mean, showed a couple of cracks this year, and there's a lot of questions. Whereas, hey, you have to pair him up with a offensive-minded coach that is going to rein in his excesses. And Jayden Daniels, like 1 year of monumental production at LSU. I mean, there are some questions. Like, is he going to be, the Lamar Jackson with better accuracy? I mean, it's certainly possible, man. But the rest of them, they do. Are there any that have all the physical tools? No. But there are more question marks of the second tier of quarterbacks, but I don't think that's all that bad. And this is one of the deepest quarterback classes in NFL history because of that. And Penix, I know that people are poo-pooing Penix because of the Michigan game, because, yes, Michigan defense is fantastic. Yes, Washington and all of those weapons, and especially the offensive line, really let Penix down. Yes, Penix left throws on the field. Yes, Penix got banged up. But imagine the world. Say the national title game was canceled. Penix didn't play in it. And Penix's final game was against Texas. I think that people would be having that discussion of having Penix in the top three for quarterbacks. I really think so. Because people forget how damn good he was against Texas, man. And Texas defense ain't no slouch, man. So, I mean, Penix, there's question marks because of his age, because of his medicals, not only the knees, but also the shoulder. And also seeing him get ragdolled a little bit in Michigan, there's some questions about durability. Plus, I mean, he's probably got the most arm talent of any quarterback in this class. He's got great pinpoint accuracy. He's got that huevos factor. When the game is on the line, he's not afraid to make a play. And, I mean, people just ignore, like, he had 2 amazing seasons of tape at Washington, leading fourth quarter overtime drives and just really getting it done in clutch. But people just ignore that because of what happened in the national title game. And you could say that's recency bias, sure, but also you do have to factor in, I mean, that was the biggest game of his life, and he kind of shat the bed. I mean, that does have to factor in, and it does count against him. But I think Penix has enough tools where if the Vikings re-sign Kirk for a 1 or 2 year deal and the draft of Penix in the first round, yes, I still think that he's going to be a first rounder, probably top half of the first round guy, and have him sit for a couple years, perfect. And Bo Nix, there's question marks about Bo Nix too. I understand that he put up all those insane numbers at Oregon, but I mean, it was a JV offense. It was a simplistic offense, and it really is an exasperated version of Hendon Hooker at Tennessee last draft, where beyond Hendon Hooker and the ACL, but how do you parse out the stats that he put up versus his ADOT, average depth of target, versus I mean, all the reasons why we downgrade Brock Purdy because he's throwing these small little screen passes and little dink and dunk passes, and then McCaffrey, Debo, and Kittle are doing the rest. That applies to Bo Nix too, right? Now, I do think that Bo Nix has good accuracy. I don't think that he has the strongest arm in the world. I do think that if you want to have a vertical passing game with him, he could be limited. But, I mean, there is a lot to like about his game as well, but there's still significant number of questions. And McCarthy... So McCarthy is going to be a player that does need to add weight to his frame, except that's the easiest thing to do in the NFL. I do think that he is a solid leader. I do think that he has accuracy at 3 levels. I do think that he does have a solid arm. But what held him back in Michigan was he was in a running offense, run first offense, run second offense, and then McCarthy was the rest of it. And frankly, I think McCarthy may have had his draft stock tainted even more than Penix in the national title game, because McCarthy was 10 of 18. And people don't realize that, hey, he only had to throw 18 times because the Michigan running game was devastating against that Washington Clown Shoes defense. Right? And McCarthy, we said this a bunch. I think that he does have the traits that scale up. I think that he would certainly benefit the most from sitting for a year, maybe 2. And McCarthy, I think that there could be 5-6 quarterbacks in the first round, but if you're able to get McCarthy in the second round and you go defense, notably edge rusher, or maybe Jazon Newton at 11, I mean, I would certainly take that. And again, it would be having your cake and eat it too, where McCarthy doesn't have to play right away, which would greatly benefit him, and would be able to learn from Kirk Cousins, learn to be a pro's pro. And frankly, since he hasn't really he hasn't been the volume passer that some of these other quarterbacks have had in college. Maybe he doesn't have those bad habits. Maybe he doesn't have those institutional scars that you have to tear down and rebuild. So, I mean, just having a raw ball of athletic clay, I think that could be a plus for Kevin O'Connell and company working with McCarthy. Jordan Travis is going to get dinged because of his height as well as coming off that injury. But Jordan Travis is a gamer. I think Florida State would have certainly had a puncher's chance in the tournament if he would have been there, because then if they would have made the playoff, then Verse probably doesn't opt out. Most of the team doesn't opt out. And I think Jordan Travis is really good, man. But that injury is going to ding him quite a bit. Oh, Cam Ward's off this list too. He committed to the U. And then I don't know, there's certainly quarterbacks to like, except there are question marks around them. There certainly aren't any perfect prospects, including up at the top of the draft with May, Williams, and Daniels. But I think that the Vikings, they can move up in the draft, they could move down in the draft, they could stick and pick, and there's no excuse why they can't come away with a prospect that they really like for a quarterback in the future. But that's it. That is Q&A for this wonderful, amazing, beautiful Thursday. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But until next time, Skull, production value.